Hi, it's Sue. Thanks for joining me for today's Bible reading for April 2nd, and it is 1 Samuel 21 to 24. So, 4 short chapters today. Let's see what kind of goodies we can dig out of this. Father, in the name of Jesus, I ask that you reveal yourself to us through your word, that according to Ephesians, you open our eyes of our understanding and the knowledge of you, and according to Psalm 119:18, that you open our eyes to behold wondrous things out of your word. In Jesus' name. Verse 1. Then David came to Nob to Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech came to meet David, trembling, and said to him, Why are you alone, and no man with you? David said to Ahimelech the priest, The king has commanded me to do something, and has said to me, Let no one know anything about the business about which I send you and what I have commanded you. I have sent the young men to a certain place. Now therefore, what is under your hand? Please give 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever is available. The priest answered David and said, I have no common bread, but there is holy bread. If only the young men have kept themselves from women. David answered the priest and said to him, Truly, women have been kept from us as usual these 3 days. When I came out, the vessel of the young men were holy, though it were only a common journey. How much more then today shall their vessels be holy? So the priest gave him holy bread, for there was no bread there but the showbread that was taken from before Yahweh, to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul, I just figured out what that meant. So in other words, they took away the bread that was there to put hot bread, the fresh bread every day. So they gave David what they took off of the table of showbread that was before the Lord. Okay. I might be slow sometimes when I'm reading this. I just caught that. I think a lot of times I just read past stuff. I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I like to notice some of those little details that I may have missed before. Okay, where was I? Verse 7. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before Yahweh, and his name was Doeg the Edomite, the best of the herdsmen who belonged to Saul. David said to Ahimelech, Isn't there here under your hand a spear or a sword? For I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. The priest said, Behold, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you would like to take that, take it, for there is no other except that here. David said, There is none like it. Give it to me. David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, to the king of Gath. The servants of Achish said to him, Isn't this David the king of the land? Didn't they sing to one another about him in dances, saying, Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s? David laid up these words in his heart and was very afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. He changed his behavior before them and pretended to be insane in their hands, and scribbled on the doors of the gate, and let spittle fall on his beard. Then Achish said to the servants, Look, you see the man is insane. Why then have you brought him to me? Do I lack madmen, that you have brought me this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Should this fellow come into my house? David therefore departed from there, and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. Every one who was in distress, who was in debt, and who was discontented, gathered themselves to him, and he became captain over them. So you see, Saul's leadership had led to economic distress. That's what it says. They were in distress, they were in debt, and they were discontented. Typical of any unrighteous ruler. That's the results. The Bible says, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice, and when the unrighteous rule, they mourn. And that's what was happening here. Still part of verse 2. There were with him about 400 men. David went from there to Mitzvah of Moab, and he said to the king of Moab, Please let my father and my mother come out with you until I know what God will do for me. He brought them before the king of Moab, and they lived with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. The prophet Gad said to David, Don't stay in the stronghold. Depart and go into the land of Judah. Then David departed and came into the forest of Hereth. Saul heard that David was discovered with the men who were there. Now Saul was sitting in Gibeah under the tamarisk tree in Ramah with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing around him. I'm sure at this point, because he had acted crazy and was throwing his spear at people, including his own son, they were probably standing around looking at that spear, hoping it didn't come at them. He's just become a terrifying tyrant at this point, given to mood swings and outbursts. Verse 7. Saul said to his servants who stood around him, "Hear now, you Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards? Will he make all of you captains of thousands of captains of hundreds, that all of you have conspired against me, and there is no one else who discloses to me when my son makes a treaty with the son of Jesse, and there is none of you who is sorry for me or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait as it is today?" So he's jealous. He's really bothered because his son Jonathan had, sided with David. And there's nothing he can do about all this because he basically brought it on himself. So it says, then Doeg the Edomite, who stood by the servants of Saul, answered and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob to Ahimelech the son of Ahitub. He inquired of Yahweh for him and gave him food and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. So see, he's trying to save himself. And he's throwing Ahimelech under the bus, even though Ahimelech didn't do anything wrong, but he's making it look like he did. So it says, excuse me. Then the king sent to Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and to all his father's house, the priests who were in Nob, and they all came to the king. Saul said, Hear now, you son of Ahitub. He answered, Here I am, my lord. Saul said to him, Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me, to lie in wait, as it is today? Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, Who among all your servants is so faithful as David? Who is the king's son-in-law and is taken in your counsel and is honorable to your house? In other words, he didn't know they had had a falling out when David came to him. Remember, David made it look like everything was fine. So he's going, it was honoring you that I took care of David. I thought he was doing your work, Like, how would I know? How was I supposed to know? Verse 15. Have I today begun to inquire of God for him? Be it far from me. Don't let the king impute anything to his servants, nor to all the house of my father, for your servant knows nothing of all this, less or more. The king said, You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and your father's house. The king said to the guard who stood about him, Turn and kill the priests of Yahweh, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew that he fled and didn't disclose it to me. But the servants of the king wouldn't put their hand out to fall on the priests of Yahweh. See, they knew better. They would rather die than do that. Come against God's priests. 18. The king said to Doeg, Turn and attack the priests. Doeg the Edomite turned and attacked the priests, and he killed on that day 85 people who wore a linen ephod. He struck Nob, the city of the priests, on the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and nursing babies, and cattle and donkeys and sheep with the edge of the sword. So you see that? Like any despot leader can always find some kind of thug to do their dirty work for them, like Doeg. Doeg, just trying to save himself, didn't care about anything else. Probably had an angst against Ahimelech anyway. Remember, he was up there at the temple, detained. Verse 20. One of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. Abiathar told David that Saul had slain Yahweh's priests. David said to Abiathar, I knew on that day when Doeg the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, I am responsible for the death of all the persons of your father's house. Stay with me, don't be afraid. He who seeks my life seeks your life. You will be safe with me. David was told, Behold, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are robbing the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of Yahweh, saying, Shall I go and strike the Philistines? Yahweh said to David, Go, strike the Philistines and save Keilah. David's men said to him, Behold, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines? Then David inquired of Yahweh yet again. Yahweh answered him and said, Arise, go down to Keilah. I will deliver the Philistines into your hand. David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines and brought away their livestock and killed them with a great slaughter. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. When Abiathar the son of Ahimelech, fled to David to Keilah, he came down with an ephod in hand. Saul was told that David had come to Keilah. Saul said, God has delivered him into my hand, for he is shut in by entering into the town that has gates and bars. Saul summoned all the people to war to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. David knew that Saul was devising mischief against him, and he said to Abiathar the priest, excuse me, bring the ephod here. Then David said, O Yahweh, the God of Israel, your servant has surely heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me up into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? Yahweh, the God of Israel, I beg you, tell your servants. Yahweh said, he will come down. Then David said, will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul? Yahweh said, they will deliver you up. Then David and his men, who were about 600, arose and departed out of Keilah and went wherever they could go. Saul was told that David was escaped from Keilah, and he gave up going there. David stayed in the wilderness in the strongholds and remained in the hill country in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul sought him every day, but God didn't deliver him into his hand. David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life. David was in the wilderness of Ziph in the wood. Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. He said to him, don't be afraid, for the hand of Saul my father won't find you, and you will be king over Israel, and I will be next to you. And Saul, my father, knows this also. Then David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his house. Then the Ziphites came up to Saul to Gibeah, saying, doesn't David hide himself with us in the strongholds in the woods in the hill of Hachilah, which is on the south of the desert? Now therefore, O king, come down, according to the desire of your soul to come down, and our part will be to deliver him up into the king's hand. Saul said, you are blessed by Yahweh, for you have had compassion on me. Please go, make yet more sure, and know, and see his place where his haunt is, and who has seen him there, for I have been told that he deals very crafty. See therefore and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides himself, and come again to me with certainty, and I will go with you. It shall happen, if he is in the land, that I will search him out among all the thousands of Judah. They arose and went to Ziph before Saul. But David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the Arabah on the south of the desert. Saul and his men went to seek him. When David was told, he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. When Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness. Saul went on the side of the mountain, and David and his men on that side of the mountain, and David hurried to get away for fear of Saul. For Saul and his men surrounded David and his men to take them. But a messenger came to Saul, saying, hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid on the land. So Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. Therefore they called that place Selah Hamalekah. David went up from there and lived in the strongholds of En-gedi. When Saul had returned from following the Philistines, he was told, behold, David is in the wilderness of En-gedi. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men of all of Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens by the way where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Now David and his men were staying in the innermost parts of the cave. David's men said to him, behold, the day of which Yahweh said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it shall seem good to you. Then David arose, cut off the skirt of Saul's robe secretly. Afterward, David's heart struck him because he had cut Saul's skirt. He said to his men, Yahweh forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, Yahweh's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, since he is Yahweh's anointed. So David checked his men with these words and didn't allow the men to rise against Saul. Saul rose up out of the cave and went on his way. David also arose afterwards and went out of the cave and cried after Saul, saying, my lord the king. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the earth and showed respect. David said to Saul, why do you listen to men's words, saying, behold, David seeks to harm you? Behold, today your eyes have seen how Yahweh has delivered you into my hand in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you, and I said, I will not stretch my hand against my Lord, for he is Yahweh's anointed. Moreover, my father, behold, yes, see the skirt of your robe in my hand, for in that I cut off the skirt of your robe and didn't kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor disobedience in my hand, and I have not sinned against you, though you hunt for my life to take it. May Yahweh judge between me and you, and may Yahweh avenge me of you, but my hand will not be on you. As the proverb of the ancients say, out of the wicked comes wickedness, but my hand will not be on you. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog? A flea? May Yahweh therefore be judge, and give sentence between me and you, and see and plead my cause, and deliver me out of your hand. It came to pass when David had finished speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said, Is that your voice, my son David? Saul lifted up his voice and wept. He said to David, You are more righteous than I, for you have done good to me, whereas I have done evil to you. You have declared today how you have dealt well with me, because when Yahweh had delivered me into your hand, you didn't kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, he will let him go away. Will he let him go away unharmed? Therefore may Yahweh reward you good for that which you have done to me today. Now behold, I know that you will surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hand. Swear now therefore to me by Yahweh that you will not cut off my offspring after me, and that you will not destroy my name out of my father's house. David swore to Saul. Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. And that is the end of today's reading. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow. Shalom, shalom.